Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we're super happy to have you here. And if you've been listening and enjoying for a while, I would be super grateful if you would please take a moment to give us a review on Apple Podcasts. It's one of the best and simplest ways to pay it forward and help others find the show so that they too can tap into the powerful perspectives and positive vibrations we are collectively emanating. The other unique and magical way to share this show is by sending any friends you think would benefit from listening to this podcast our Game with the Universe link at positivehead.com/game. Also listed in the show notes, which will serve them up a quote-unquote random episode when they click it. Just instruct them before clicking the link to close their eyes for a moment and sincerely ask the universe to cue up the episode that contains the insight and perspectives that they most need to hear at this point in their life journey, and then click to listen to whatever episode is synchronistically served up to them. I have heard time and time again from people about the incredible results they received playing the game. So just tell your friends magical results are guaranteed or their karma back. All right, all you positive heads, welcome, welcome. Here we grow again. So grateful to be back with you as always. Today, we are going to talk about a hot topic. Yes, that place in the mall where you can get your latest and greatest goth wear. No, we're going to talk about personal boundaries versus oneness. This has been a topic that's come up for me lately, exploring boundaries in my own life with someone, and then kind of like, juxtaposing that with this idea of oneness. So what is the deal with boundaries? If it's all one, isn't there no boundaries? The short answer to that is no. That's not the case. Personal boundaries are important, and we're going to talk about that and how to rectify that with the whole idea and knowingness that all is actually one, right? One consciousness. The consciousness that animates my form is the consciousness that animates your form. The separation is an illusion, right? So this is something we talk a lot about too, this idea of sort of relative truths and relative perspectives. So how to apply that, some of those concepts and ideas based off the nature of the situation in which you now find yourself, a physical being having a human experience, which entails some degree of separation from others at some level. So before I go deeper down that rabbit hole, though, I would like to take a moment to read a review on iTunes. You guys know I love my iTunes reviews. Not only do they help us to reach new people, but they also help to fuel my fire to continue this labor of love. And this one came in from Shana Adele with a little mushroom emoji right next to the name. And it says, "Too good not to share," spelled TWO. I started listening to Positive Head about a year ago after my best friend and soul sister turned me on to the podcast. After working a particularly stressful and emotionally draining teaching job, I sought out the podcast in order to raise my positivity, not just for my own well-being, but for the well-being of my students too. I very recently had a synchronicity with the podcast that was just too good not to share. Last night, I began a new teaching adventure and noticed the number of my classroom was 222. I knew that was a little wink from the universe telling me that I was on the right path. However, when I went to listen to the newest episode this morning, I was shocked and so excited to see that Brandon was also having synchronicities with the number 222, and that Abraham Hicks even mentioned the number in the clip that Brandon played. What an awesome synchronicity, right? I felt so much love and gratitude after listening to that episode this morning. It provided me with the reassurance that we truly are the masters of our own reality, that the universe has, quote unquote, got our backs, and that we are interconnected in this beautiful, magical life. Love you all so, so much. Oh, thank you. And to add to that synchronicity, of course, I have one friend on social media who really will, every few weeks, I'll see them post something about 222 being their number. And what do you know? Just 30 minutes ago, seeing their Instagram live story, they had circled 222 on something. So there it is. It's back. And I remember that episode that you're referencing to. That was a pretty amazing synchronicity. Those winks from the universe are so incredibly powerful and sort of putting an exclamation point on what it is that we are, what it is we're perceiving and picking up at that time, right? Love it, love it, love it. So if you guys haven't reviewed on iTunes, please do so. Like I said, I always say it helps us to reach new people. Helps us to reach new people and helps to continue to fuel my fire, to continue on this labor of love project that is Positive Head. All right, so let's go further into boundaries and oneness. Brene Brown said it really well. She said, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves even when we risk disappointing others. So huge. I think a lot of times, especially those of you who are really empathic and really open-hearted and really loving, we like to please, right? We want people to like us. We want to be happy. And a lot of times you'll have someone who is a very sort of fiery presence in your life. I've been this individual, quite honestly, I think of my poor brother and sister growing up, with me, so fiery, and they're both like super emotive, like emotional. One's a Cancer and one's a Pisces, right? And I'm a Leo. So I came in just like, as my grandfather called me, bull of the woods. I guess I was like pretty taking charge pretty quickly early on. And here they are, super sensitive. And, I would just sort of, push my will onto them of what I wanted, or, in lots of cases in my life in the past, before I really understood the importance of understanding others have a different perspective than you, and that's okay. And so understanding that if you are letting others dictate what you do, imposing their will on you, it's really the ultimate violation against self. You're violating your own boundaries. And it doesn't mean that you're mean if you set boundaries because you don't want to do things someone else's way. You came here to live your truth. You are a unique emanation of Source. So yes, we are all one, but you're a unique emanation of Source that is wanting to have a certain perspective and vantage point through you, Sources, right? So if you violate that, your unique way of interacting in the world, you're at odds with oneness at that point, right? So it's really, really important to get very, very true and authentic with how you feel. I'm going to share a clip here in a few minutes from Teal Swan talking about this very topic. And she says, basically, your boundaries are synonymous with your feelings. And I fully agree with that. It's like, yes, we're one. Yes, they're an extension of you. And yes, you came here to have the experience of not only remembering that, but also experiencing that knowingness through the unique, emanation that you are. You're going to have your own taste, your own musical taste, your own preferences in regards to relationship. Maybe you want a monogamous relationship and someone else wants a polyamorous union or something like that. It's like, okay, it doesn't make you wrong because you want one thing and they want another. It's all about understanding and interacting with the world in a way that is really, really honoring your boundaries. And the more you do that, the more you're telling the universe that you deserve what it is that you seek. Hey, I'm defining how I show up in the world. I am not settling. I am going to live my truth fully and know that the universe will respond to that and actually bring circumstances that are a reflection. So oftentimes what's happening with people is they're getting sort of tested in their own personal boundaries. They're then violating their own boundaries, letting someone else sort of dictate, letting the world dictate. And we're constantly being told by others where our boundaries should be, right? The culture, society, our parents, our lover, our everyone has been telling you, your teacher, everyone's been telling you your whole life. And we've bought into that. And once you sort of take back your own personal power, your autonomy, your understanding of where your boundaries are, and knowing that that's perfectly fine as long as they're not instilling on someone else's boundaries, right? As long as you're not, doing harm to others, your boundaries aren't what you want is crossing into someone else's, violating their boundaries, you're good, right? So really analyze that. I encourage all of you to take some time and really think about that one today. Where is it that I am, committing the ultimate sin against self by allowing my own boundaries to be crossed? And that's the case because if you feel out of whack with it, but you're doing it anyway, you've crossed your own personal boundary and you're not living your ultimate truth. And as a result, you're not co-creating and manifesting what it is you truly deserve and seek. You're sort of playing small, right? And it's painful on the way. So, a great way to do this is start asking people to tell you exactly how they feel. All the sugarcoat BS that we do. We dance around wearing all these masks and we don't want to hurt people's feelings. And yes, it's important to speak in a way that's tactful, but also just be really truthful. Tell them hey, tell me exactly. You can start by setting the precedent with others. Hey, tell me exactly how you feel. Yes, I've now let you know what I prefer. Now tell me exactly what you prefer. How do you feel? Where are your boundaries at? And don't sugarcoat it. Let's just get rid of all the sugarcoating and get really to the core of what's going on here. And this is how we can start to really understand where each other stands without, sort of having to interpret the BS masks that everyone's wearing to try and, let's get to the root of what's going on. And what we'll find is we can live in a way that is in healthy relationship to our own personal boundaries. And it may mean that some relationships change in your life. It may mean people fall away and new ones come in, but that's okay. That's a part of the ride, right? That's like Wayne Dyer talks about this life. It's all about, you're on a bus and it's got all these stops and people get on and then they get off and maybe they stay the whole ride. Maybe they leave and get off again, get off at one point and come back, 10 stops later. Who knows? It's all okay. Your job is to really get in healthy relationship to self and allow the right matches to appear. Not to settle, not to let someone else manipulate you into what they want, which is completely at odds with what feels in alignment for you. I heard the quote one time, and I forget exactly who said it, but you can do what you want, but not want what you want, right? So let's stop doing what we think we're supposed to be doing, and let's get in alignment with what we really want and crafting our life in a way that allows for those doors, those relationships, those circumstances to come in. And it starts by stopping being inauthentic with yourself, being absolutely truthful for yourself and willing to risk losing whatever it is you have, whatever unhealthy relationship you have with, these sort of minimalized versions of yourself and your life and your relationships, and allowing those to fall away and allowing something new to come in as you really, really get firm in your own core truth about who you are, how you want to show up in the world, and what version of oneness you represent, what piece of the puzzle. It didn't come here. Maybe at some other point in our evolution, it all merges back into one. It thinks the same, sees the same, does the same. I'm sure there is some version of oneness, God self, where it's all sort of merged into one consciousness. There's a perspective where that lives and breathes and exists, right? We're not there right now. We are in the process of remembering our connectedness and exploring what it feels like to interact with these other aspects of self. But we definitely have an autonomous, independent self that deserves to be respected at this point in your evolutionary journey, for sure. So let's not get lost in regards to that as we sort of start exploring this idea of oneness, and certainly not letting someone who is very strong-willed who sort of bully you into crossing all kinds of boundaries you don't want to cross. All right, so As I mentioned, I have a clip here. It's a little bit longer than the average clip I share with Teal Swan, but it's a good one. And if you guys haven't heard Teal Swan, she is quite the interesting character. I had her on episode 366. If you go to positivehead.com, you can search all the way back to the first episodes. And I know some of the apps you can't. So go to positivehead.com, search 366. You'll see Teal Swans if you want to check that out. Really, really interesting individual, one who sort of triggers some people sometimes and certainly has a lot of wisdom. But I enjoyed my conversation with her, and I enjoyed this video that I found on the Teal Swan YouTube page, her YouTube page, very much. It's called Personal Boundaries vs. Oneness. Take a listen.
Hello everyone. Today I've decided to answer a question that I've been getting again and again for the last 2 years. The question is about boundaries. What are boundaries? How do I set healthy boundaries? And most especially, how do I rectify the idea of boundaries with the idea that we live in a universe that is all one? We exist in a third-dimensional physical reality, and thus we perceive a self. This gives rise to the perception of a boundary, i.e. a separation between ourselves and that which we see as other. What are boundaries? Boundaries are guidelines for how someone relates the self to the rest of the world. They are rules of conduct built out of a mix of beliefs, opinions, attitudes, past experiences, and social learning. Personal boundaries operate in two directions, affecting both incoming and outgoing interactions between people. Boundaries help to define an individual by outlining likes and dislikes, what is right for a person personally or wrong for them personally. Defining these things helps us to know how we will and won't allow ourselves to be treated by others. Here are some signs that you might have unhealthy boundaries. Saying no when you mean yes, or yes when you mean no. Feeling guilty when you do say no. Acting against your integrity or values in order to please others. Not speaking up when you have something to say. Adopting another person's beliefs or ideas so you are accepted. Not calling out someone who has mistreated you. Accepting physical touch or sex when you don't want it. Allowing yourself to be interrupted or distracted to accommodate someone else, or their immediate wants or needs. Giving too much just to be perceived as useful. Becoming overly involved in someone's problems or difficulties. Not defining and communicating your emotional needs in relationships. But it's important to understand that the biggest problem is not that other people violate our boundaries, it's that we violate our own boundaries. When you let someone violate your boundaries, you are violating your own boundaries. You are not staying true to what feels good to you. This is self-betrayal. If you go against your personal boundaries, you violate yourself, you abandon yourself. Boundaries could get very complicated if we were defining boundaries according to cerebral concepts of right or wrong, wanted or unwanted, or according to boundaries other people think are or aren't healthy. After all, there are physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, mental boundaries, spiritual boundaries, and sexual boundaries. So I'm going to make it very easy for you. Your boundaries are defined and are no different than your feelings. Your feelings will always tell you whether a boundary has been violated. So as long as you're listening to your emotions, you know exactly what your boundaries are. For example, if someone said something that hurt you, they crossed an emotional boundary, and you will feel hurt, which is your indication that your boundaries need to be reassessed. Or if someone asks you to a party and you feel as if you don't want to go, but you go anyway, you have violated your own boundary. And your emotions will reflect that to you by making you feel negative emotion. This is why it is so crucial to be in touch with how you feel all day, every day. So we can think of a boundary as a line that uniquely defines and separates your personal happiness, your personal integrity, your personal desires, your personal needs, and therefore most importantly, your personal truth from the rest of the universe. He who does not listen to and respect what they themselves feel violates his own boundaries. He who does not listen to and respect what others feel violates other people's boundaries. It is as simple as that. Practice feeling how things feel. Listen to how you feel. Listen to your emotions. because your feelings and your emotions are the indication of what your boundaries are. It is very important that you start to listen to and heed those emotions if you want to live the kind of life that's worth living, if you want to enjoy your experience, if you want to stay in alignment with your own personal truth. But it's important to understand that personal truth, which is what boundaries really are, can only be told to you by you. Society can't tell you what your boundaries are, your parents can't tell you what your boundaries are, your friends can't tell you what your boundaries are. Only you can know what your boundaries are. But this is what society tries to do. This is what your friends try to do. This is what your family tries to do. This is what your mate tries to do. They try to tell you what your boundaries should and shouldn't be, or are and aren't. But they can't step into your body and feel for you. It is crucial that we not only know who we are and what we really want, but also that we know that we are known for who we are and what we really want by others. When we are ashamed of who we are and what we want, we have poor boundaries. We are ashamed out of our true sense of self as children. In order to fit into the family and into society, we had to develop an identity that was acceptable to the people around us, a false self. This is a survival strategy. We become the person we think we are supposed to be and shame the person that we really are. How do you know if you have set up a false self? You fear other people thinking negatively of you. Do you know what you really want? Do you let other people tell you what to think or believe or how to feel? Do you do things that you don't really want to do and say yes when you really want to say no, or say no when you really want to say yes? Are you afraid to let people know how you really feel? Are you afraid of people thinking negatively of you? When most people think of a boundary violation, they think of an intrusive boundary violation, like a rape, when someone does something to you, and it's almost a towards you directional violation. But there are also other kinds of violation. There is a violation that's called a distancing violation as well. What that is when someone who you are close to withdraws from you. They cross an emotional boundary going outwards away from you. That is also a boundary violation, and it is sometimes the most painful kind. Those of us who had invalidating parents have a very difficult time setting healthy boundaries. We may violate our boundaries and let other people violate our boundaries all the time. We may lack them altogether. Here's a common scenario. A child begins to feel angry because their parent is always working and never has time to be with them. The child expresses that anger and is invalidated. The parent says, "I spend more time with you than any other parent I know spends with their children." And the child is shamed then for being ungrateful. The child learns that the way they feel is not true and that they should be ashamed for feeling the way they feel. Anger is not acceptable, so the child creates a false self that cannot express anger, potentially a false self that says thank you all the time. Over time, he or she believes that who they really are is happy and grateful. They have never really admitted to the fact that deep down they are truly angry. It is hard for people to set boundaries because, number one, we put other people's needs and feelings first. Number two, we don't know ourselves. Number three, we don't feel as if we have rights. Number four, we believe that setting boundaries jeopardizes the relationship. And number five, we never learn to have healthy boundaries. Most of us were told when we were young that how we felt was either not how we felt or was not okay to feel. Most of us were told that what we saw, we did not see. Most of us were told that what we think we wanted is not what we really wanted, or that it was not okay to want what we wanted. We lived lives where our own personal truth was invalidated again and again and again. This made most of us feel crazy and as if we could not trust ourselves, so we began to go against the way we felt and the things we wanted, and in doing so we did not stay true to ourselves. This internal self-betrayal is what caused us to stop trusting ourselves. Self-trust is all about boundaries. That's all it really is. If you don't trust yourself, you have not so good, not so healthy boundaries. It means that you are in the habitual pattern of abandoning your own personal truth and the way you feel. This internal self-betrayal makes you feel unsafe with you. We don't trust ourselves when we feel unsafe with ourselves. And who would really feel unsafe with someone who abandoned them? That's what you've been doing to you. No wonder you don't trust yourself. We feel unsafe with ourselves when we watch ourselves make decisions that don't feel good or act in a way that doesn't represent our true selves. When we ignore the way we really feel and abandon our personal truth, we become, in essence, untrustworthy to ourselves. The only way to begin trusting yourself is to learn how to tune back into how you feel and to honor how you truly feel. Maintaining a false self by denying who we truly are, denying what we truly want, denying how we truly feel, is a barrier to intimacy. We cannot have good relationships with other people because our false selves become like a mask that we won't let anyone past. Much more than that, it's a mask we won't let ourselves pass. We become convinced that the mask is us. It takes over our personality, it takes over our identity, it takes over our sense of self to the degree that we have no idea who we are, what we want. We're confused, we're blundering through life. To have intimacy, to have a deep relationship with someone, is to let the truth, the full, total, raw, unrestricted truth of who you are, meet someone else at the heart center. You can't do that when there's a mask in between you and them. We want someone in our lives desperately that understands how we feel. But we don't even understand how we feel. We wind up having a relationship of convenience with ourselves. We only listen to our own personal truth when it doesn't cause trouble or difficulty. We don't realize that we are causing the very difficulty that we are trying to avoid by not listening to our feelings and personal truth all the time, regardless of whether it causes difficulty or not. The bottom line is, it is impossible to know who you are and what you like and what you believe and what you want unless you know exactly how you feel. People must have healthy boundaries in order to have healthy relationships. That's the only way you're going to get into a relationship and not lose yourself completely. So how does this idea of boundaries fit into the idea that we live in a universe, in and of a universe, which is all one? It seems like a contradiction, but not so fast. If I am embracing what I truly am, what I truly want, what I truly need, what I truly feel, I am embracing the unique expression of source energy that I truly am. I'm actually more in alignment with a universe that is one than if I am losing my boundaries, because I am denying the true expression of myself as an extension of source. In other words, I am embracing the unique expression of source that I am rather than seeing myself as separate from others or from source. And so, personal boundaries are not a contradiction to spirituality. We are simply using the word boundary, which we associate with resistance. In one sense, to have boundaries, you have to differentiate between yourself and between the rest of the world. But we don't really have to worry about doing this, do we? Because our physical brains do it for us. The minute you come down into a physical experience, as a physical human, your experience will tell you that you are separate from the rest of the universe. So it doesn't take much thought to see yourself as a self. It was always the plan for you to experience a separate self because this perspective serves the expansion of the universe's own process of self-awareness. So we all already do experience a self and other. This perspective creates a good deal of unhappiness until we allow ourselves to go in the direction of individual happiness, which ultimately leads to our discovery that we are all one, and that whatever serves our individual happiness serves all else that is. But here's the thing that really matters. A boundary is not about resisting what you do not want. This is why most people see boundaries as unhealthy, because we associate them with resistance. And I can tell you that if you're in resistance to something that is unwanted, then you are not in alignment, and that's not a healthy boundary. It's an unhealthy boundary. So the people who walk through this world having resistance to people violating them in any way are not a measure of health. They're a measure of unhealth. Those people are focused on what is unwanted, pushing against what is unwanted. Their boundaries are erected to keep out what is unwanted. Their boundaries don't exist to keep them happy. They only think they do. It is as unhealthy to have resistance towards violation that could be imposed on you by the world as it is to have no boundaries and to let the world constantly trespass on your reality. People who build walls against intimacy are not exhibiting healthy boundaries. They are in resistance to the world. An unhealthy boundary pushes against the world and tells others how they can and can't behave. But we have no control over how they behave and what they do and don't do. We only have control over what we do and don't do. So healthy boundaries, unlike most boundaries we're used to, such as fences or rules, are non-resistant in nature, and thus they are in alignment with oneness. Healthy boundaries are not about controlling what other people can and can't do to you. They are entirely about you personally defining and then following your individual sense of happiness and desires and personal truth. It is a state of self-awareness, integrity, and self-love. You can't have any of those things if you are pushing against the world, and you can't have them if you are letting the world define who you are, what you want, and how you feel. Having a healthy sense of self serves not only you, but also the universe, and ultimately your happiness is everyone else's happiness as well, because we are all one. I want you to engage in an activity for me. Take out a piece of paper and a pen and write down 10 things that you are the most unhappy about in your current reality. Maybe there are things that people are doing to you that you don't like. Maybe it's just a situation that you are not enjoying. Then, relative to this list, I want you to ask yourself, are there any boundaries that I am crossing in this experience, which is giving rise to this negative emotion that I have? How do I really feel about these experiences or these things, items that I've written down on this list? An example may be, my spouse watches the television after coming home from work and ignores me. This makes me feel rejected and unloved, like a void of loneliness is welling up inside me. By doing this, he is violating an emotional boundary because I am not okay with people treating me like this. So I am going to write him a letter expressing how I feel. This last part is especially crucial. It's an action step. It's you deciding what it's going to take for you to pull yourself back into alignment with your personal truth and to honor how you feel now. It's crucial to make changes based on how you really feel, to decide specific actions you can take. Self-expression is paramount in this circumstance. In this case, you may decide to say no next time someone asks you to do something. Maybe you'll make a phone call and back out of a commitment you've made. Maybe you'll set a boundary by saying something to them next time they hurt you, such as, please don't derail my efforts to give up smoking or remind me how many times I've failed. Or you could assert a boundary by asserting a positive request, such as, I'd really appreciate your help to succeed this time. I want you to remember that as time goes on, your boundaries will be reassessed. Boundaries aren't meant to be static, they're meant to be constantly evolving. Maybe as things change in your life, maybe a new relationship or a new baby in the house, you'll have to reassess your boundaries because your feelings relative to what you want to do and not do are going to change. Allow this to happen. Your boundaries will change throughout your life. But it's very important that as your boundaries change, they change according to your feelings, not according to how other people think you should feel or change. We can rehabilitate each other relative to boundaries as well. And it's very easy. Just remember this. Whenever you're in a conversation with someone, stop and tell them that you want them to tell you exactly how they feel without being afraid of how you're going to respond. Reassure them that what you really want is for them to stay in alignment with how they truly feel and what they truly want. This gives them permission to be themselves and to actually define their boundaries when they're in your presence. Think about what kind of world this would be if we were all giving each other this kind of permission, instead of walking around trying to tell other people what their boundaries should and shouldn't be. The bottom line is, if we want to live happy lives and make the right choices for ourselves personally, we need to know how we feel, admit to how we feel, and express how we feel. Developing boundaries is a crucial part of finding our true selves. It is therefore a crucial part of spiritual practice and life success. We do not need to resist others to do it. Instead, we need to fully allow ourselves and to express the truth of ourselves at all times. As I said before, defining boundaries can be complicated until you simplify it and understand that your boundaries are always reflected by virtue of how you feel. Your boundaries are no different than how you feel. If you feel like doing something, then do it, and you are not violating a boundary. If you feel like not doing something and you do it, you are violating a boundary. It is as simple as that. As a spiritual luminary, my job is to offer to you some advice for how to live a life which you enjoy living. And my number one suggestion is to follow happiness, which is the same as following how you feel. You can't deny who you truly are. You can't deny who you truly want. You can't deny your feelings without also experiencing a decrease in your level of happiness. So the more in alignment you are with your personal truth, and the more you honor your feelings, the happier you will be. It is my ultimate promise. Have a good week.
Before we continue on with today's episode, I'd like to take a quick moment to tell you about our sponsor, HelloFresh. HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit that makes it easy to skip trips to the grocery store by delivering farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes right to your door. And when it comes to options, let's be honest, variety is the spice of life. That's why HelloFresh's menu includes 40 recipes and over 100 add-on items to choose from every week. And if you're like me, your fall schedule doesn't leave you with much time to spare. With HelloFresh, you don't need to spend all evening in the kitchen to whip up a delicious and nutritious meal. With their quick and easy recipes and 15-minute meals, you can get dinner on the table in less time than it takes to get takeaway or delivery. When I tried HelloFresh myself for the first time recently, I was extremely impressed with the quality and flavor of everything that I prepared. So, if you'd like to see and taste why HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit for yourself, go to hellofresh.com/50positivehead and use code 50positivehead for 50% off plus 15% off for the next 2 months. Once again, that's hellofresh.com/50positivehead and use code 50positivehead for 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months. Bon appetit. Your boundaries are synonymous with your feelings. If you don't respect what you feel, you're violating your own boundaries. If you don't respect what others feels, you're violating their boundaries, right? Both are important. No one can tell you what your boundaries are, even though they constantly try. And when you really trust that, I'm feeling this way for a reason, I don't need to second guess based off of someone else's, opinion. I'm just going to trust that it's right for me because I'm feeling this way. And I'm going to follow that intuitive knowing, that inner knowing. I'm going to follow my emotions. I'm going to follow my feelings. Now you're demonstrating what it's like to have healthy boundaries with yourself. And I love how she talked about, look, it's not about resistance, because that's a big one that people start saying, oh yeah, all these things out there are wrong. And of course you hear me say all the time, what you resist persists. So resisting is pushing against someone else and trying to impose our boundaries on another. Yeah, there are things that almost all of us can agree on is a violation of a healthy relationship with the world, certainly. But us pushing against that, because to that individual or the individuals that are participating in these sometimes atrocities, right? They're within their right. That their boundaries are, that's fine. They're doing it. And, by the way to sort of overcome that isn't pushing so hard against it, because what we resist will persist. So if we learn to be non-resistant in nature, and allowing things to dissolve by not giving them our energy, and trusting that people who are doing things that are really out of whack, it's like the snake eating its own tail. It will ultimately do itself more harm than anyone else. Now, it doesn't mean, once again, this goes down a whole nother rabbit hole, by the way, but just to add to that, it doesn't mean if we see some awful violation happening, we don't step in at that moment. If we see someone else's boundaries clearly being crossed, right, in let's say an example of a violent way or something, then obviously we want to do what we can to prevent that. But railing against all the wrongs in the world, constantly giving our energy to what's wrong, where attention goes, energy flows, right? And so it's that's a delicate balance. And like I said, that's a whole nother conversation, which of course I went deep down the rabbit hole of on the podcast other times, but we're kind of running out of time for today, so I won't go there. But yeah, just to kind of sum the rest of this up, I mean, one of the important things that I think she pointed out, boundaries are constantly evolving. So it's okay to constantly reassess. A lot of times I think we get stuck in these ideas. Oh, here's who I am. Here's what I do. Here's what I believe in. And, when I was 18, this is what I thought. And when I was 12, this is what I thought. And when I was 22, this is what I thought. And now I'm 36 and I don't necessarily have the same boundary anymore, but I'm supposed to carry it forward, aren't I? Understand, no, you're constantly evolving. Your perspective's constantly expanding, and therefore your boundaries are constantly evolving, and that's okay. That can be, let's say you've changed how you feel about something, and someone's like, no, you can't change. You've been saying for 20 years, you feel this way. Okay, that's fine. And it's my right to evolve and change and reassess. Yeah, and I think a big part of this of sort of living authentically, she talked about, is asking people to tell you exactly how they feel. Get to the root of the root of the root. All these masks, all this dancing around, let's stop it. Enough is enough. It's tired. It doesn't get us what we want. It's chasing your own tail. All right. Well, this has been an epic odyssey, epic adventure as always. And speaking of Odyssey, that makes me think of Optimistic. Every week it's been pushed back because there's a lot of details, but it is coming very, very soon. So for those of you who want to come to the retreats at the Mystic Manor and participate in the new late night style talk show, be a guest on it, come on it, that we're going to be shooting beginning in July. Officially. That's one of the things. There was some question about whether it would be June or July, and that is finally official. So any of you guys who want to hear about that, drop me an email. You'll be the first to know very, very, very soon. Brandon at positivehead.com. Just say, I'm interested in the details, and I'll send you those details before it's actually announced on the podcast. So it gives you kind of the first shot at dates and things like that, since there is a very limited number of people who will be able to, space for the retreats and to come and be on the show. So, all right, everyone. With that being said, I have a awesome song for you. This is No Regrets by Mike Love. Till next time, journey well. Love you so, so much.
All this time will pass into the past. So if you're happy, then make each moment last. Don't hold nothing back. And if you're suffering, remember it won't last. Get over it fast. Get back to living and giving love. Oh, this life is just a test. I will remember this life ain't over. So please remember not to forget a newborn baby's cry. Their very first tears, they are so hopeful, and great-grandfathers die. After many years, it is a circle of teenagers find love. They screw it all up. They are so fearful yet somehow invincible. Oh, this life is not a curse, no. hard times, and it will get worse, but always do your best. And always remember that you are blessed. Oh, everywhere you go, plant seeds, love will grow. But remember who you are, and if you travel far, remember your heart is where your home is. So if you travel to the stars, remember your heart, and you won't be homeless or homesick at all. But this life is just a test, with many failures and some success. But I will place my bets